Thank you very much for being on Cook With Me Live tonight. We are going to be making some mango salsa cups. And while everyone's logging in and just finding this video, please give me a little heads up, a little hello, that you've got everything coming through on your end. And maybe just if you could let me know who's in the kitchen with you tonight or where you're cooking from, that would be wonderful. I'd love to hear that. So while we get everything set up and started, if you haven't already got all your ingredients out, let's start piling those out of the fridge and setting everything up. And in the meantime, while I continue doing a little bit of talking here, let's start getting the water on the boil for the rice noodles. So if you haven't already got a saucepan with some water in it, let's fill, well, not quite fill one up, maybe half full. We don't need a heck of a lot for the rice noodles, and we'll get that on the boil now. So I'm just going to turn that on to max heat. And that's going to start boiling away for us for the rice noodles. All right, so the flow for tonight with the mango salsa cups, basically the mango salsa cups is a nice, light, refreshing summer, springtime sort of meal, and or just a nice entree to another meal. So I tonight am intending this to be the main meal, and it just means that maybe you're going to leave yourself enough room to have sort of 3 or 4 lettuce cups if you're going to have them in a lettuce, but I'm also going to show you another way to wrap them and another way to serve them as a bit more of a fancy entree. You might want to do this for something on your Christmas Day lunch or your Christmas Eve dinner party. Okay, so definitely some, I guess, versatility within this dish and also some versatility within the types of ingredients that we're going to use. So I really want to show you this. It's one of my absolute favorite, most refreshing meals. And also tonight I'm going to be teaching you how to cook the tempeh. So the tempeh is a fermented form of soy, which is kind of like tofu. Some of you will already be familiar with it, but I'm going to show you again tonight how to be cooking that too. Okay, so if you are just joining us in now, we're making the mango salsa cups. We've already got the water on the boil for the rice noodles, and then we're going to jump straight into making the salsa. So that once the salsa is finished, then we're going to do the tempeh, and while the tempeh is cooking, we're going to get the iceberg lettuce ready to wrap up as cups. Okay, so this should be a fairly quick meal. This is a nice, like I said, refreshing, easy, quick to pull together if you're in a pinch for something a bit fancy, if you've got guests coming over. All right, so as far as kitchen prep goes, we're going to have a little bit of veggie washing to do tonight, not a heck of a lot, so you may or may not need to get a specific bowl out for that. But let's get started with the cucumber. So we're going to just skip ahead from the mango and the avocado because I want to do the slicing with the mandolin first. So let's just give the cucumbers a good rinse. And depending on how much you feel you like these types of ingredients and or you know how many you're going to be serving, whether it's an entree like before the main as an appetizer or whether it's a main meal, you may possibly want to double the recipe. The only thing I'll qualify there is that it's a little bit softer the next day, so you may want to hold the avocado out if there's going to be extras. And it's not so good the second day. So tomorrow it's absolutely fine, but then beyond that, not so much. So let's try to make only enough so that you can finish it between today and tomorrow. All right, now the cucumbers, a couple of options, depending on whether or not you like a big, fat, chunky salsa or whether you like a smaller cut. That's entirely up to you. So we have a couple options. You can cut it by hand, in which case we would do a couple of strips. I'll do one by hand, I'll do one with the mandolin. So we could do a couple of strips on the cucumber like this. We'll lay them flat. And we probably want to go at least 2 cuts on each length to give us the right size. And then we're going to line them up and chop them into nice little cubes. So just dicing it basically. Okay. So there's our nice, that's like a great size for this type of salsa. And if you're in a real pinch for time and that seemed a bit too slow for you, then you can always make use of your mandolin if you've got one of these bad boys by now. We'd be using the thicker slice. All right, so we've got the plain flat blade slice. We've got the thick one, which I call the stir fry blade. And then we've got the julienne blade. All right, so I'm going to use the stir fry blade. All right, so how's everyone going? Are we caught up and all online? Hello, Karen. Hi, Sandeep. Thanks for watching. Matt, hello. Tiffany and Emmy, thank you for being online. Very cool. Tiffany, you have a question. Have my son home from uni and we're watching together. He's hoping to take back some tips. Awesome, Tiffany. I'd love to hear that. That's so cool. And thank you very much, son, for wanting to watch. That's very awesome. And you know, if you're fairly new to Cook With Me and new to, I guess, my way of working with people. I'm very passionate to make sure that you teenagers get to learn how to cook well before you leave home, because I've seen what happens if you don't. So thank you very much for being online. Okay, so this is what would happen if we use the stir-fry blade with the mandolin. Okay, so we'll get some strips that it'll produce there. And then you can just roughly chop through it just to get down to those cube sort of look. So if you were to make a huge big batch of this, let's say you're doing a Christmas dinner and you're serving, say 20 people, it'd probably be faster to do the mandolin chop, but it does definitely produce a different size or a different kind of shape, as you can see. By the time we get it into the salsa, I don't think anyone's going to notice. So entirely up to you. Now, when it comes to the capsicum, we can definitely benefit from the mandolin. So same thing if you want it nice and chunky on this blade. Otherwise, we can switch to a finer capsicum size with the julienne blade. So I like to start out with this one and go until we hit the seeds. Otherwise, if you're not using a mandolin, we're just going to chop it, same sort of thing, maybe slightly smaller pieces than what we did with the cucumber. Now, it's interesting. I will spend like a bit of time explaining to you, and this is the advantage of you getting to watch this on video as opposed to just reading a recipe, for example, is the advantage is I can give you all the subtleties and all the fine-tuning things that'll make this from being potentially a sloppy mess if someone were to just pull it together randomly, to me showing you kind of the little nuances that make the biggest difference for when you serve it, such as how you cut it. So this is kind of the benefit that you're getting from the video, which there's no way I could possibly get all that detail onto a page in writing, let alone actually have someone want to read it all. So this is the benefit. All right, so whatever the mandolin won't cut, we're just going to do that bit by hand. So just some little pieces. There we go. All right, and any of the long bits of the capsicum, we'll just make them a little bit finer. This can start to look like a bit of a Christmassy salad if you've got the green and the red capsicum and a little bit of orange from the mango. And if you chose yellow or orange capsicum as well, you can get a different effect. So you have some options to be very festive and decorative with it. Okay, let's pop all that in there. If anyone's still kind of observing some of the knife skill elements that I do, and I guess the benefit you have of not having everything in little pre-measured bowls and actually seeing me do it, I don't know if you've noticed, but when I gather things on the board, I flip the knife over and drag on the back of the knife, because this is not going to ruin your knife, okay? But if you're going to drag on the cut surface, very quickly you're going to have a very dull knife. It's going to be much more frustrating to use. So any dragging that we do, please, if you want to save your knives and save your effort in sharpening them later, flip the knife over. It's just a new habit to get into, but I see it a lot in people. Okay, let's move on to the onion while we have the mandolin out. Now, I don't know about you, but I like my red onion quite fine. So I'm going to switch the julienne blade. And on that note, if you are using a mandolin, these clean a lot easier if they don't have anything dry on them first. So I'm just going to give that a little rinse through my hot soapy water. Done. Okay, so the julienne blade is the finer one. Let's just peel back the skin, only chopping off this top bit. So leave the fuzzy end, but we're just going to chop off the top bit. And then that fuzzy end is going to end up being a handle for us on the mandolin. So we'll peel back the skin. Okay, sometimes it's more cooperative than others. If it's being really fussy, give it a roll. And ideally, we get this nice little flower shape. Kind of like that. But take that off. We'll just pull that off. There we go. Okay, and if there's any not so nice bits, we can just shave them off now. All right, so we'll get rid of all that. And then with the julienne blade, we just want some nice fine pieces. So I'll leave it up to you how much red onion you want to put in, okay? So some people are big fans, others are not. Given that this is a salsa, we are kind of needing that sort of onion flavor. But, you know, if, for example, you're doing the FODMAPs diet or a really restrictive diet can't have onion, you could always substitute chives. You could try a little bit of leek. You can get creative here. So we just kind of want a little bit of that oniony flavor or so. So let's go, I think for this amount, I'm probably gonna do about half of this onion because it's quite large. Yeah, that's about good. Okay. All right, and a great question by Simone. What brand is the mandolin? Yes, okay, and I'm glad you asked that, Simone, only because I have used many other kinds of mandolins and been very disappointed. So this is a Borner mandolin, B-O-R-N-E-R. It's from Germany, and it's the V3. They have a V4 and a V5. I wouldn't bother. Get the V3. I'm sure we can send a link up after the video so that you can get easier access to that as well. Hopefully at a better than retail price. We can find something for you. So yeah, great question, because I think for me, the difference, you know, when I go in and clean somebody's pantry and kitchen out, and we do a pantry flip, I find mandolins often shoved in the back corners of pantries and kitchens. And I then wonder, you know, why aren't they using them? So then we try them and we kind of pull them out of the box and see how they go. And it's really interesting because there's this fine line between really useful and easy to clean and totally not useful or dangerous or not convenient or not saving you any time. So there's, especially with mandolins, there is a big difference, and this is the one that I've found is absolutely best value for money and best quality. The blades just, they last for years, absolutely years. You could spend about probably 4 times that to get a Tupperware version, which is the only one that came in second place in my opinion, but you don't need to spend that much money in my opinion. Okay, I believe I can hear my water boiling. I don't know about you, so I'm gonna get the rice noodles in. Now rice noodles, depending on what thickness you got, just hang there for a second, depending what thickness you've got, they might cook a little bit differently. So I've got the next thickness up from vermicelli. And this is probably my favorite size of a noodle. So you can see they're quite thin. They're not quite a vermicelli noodle, all right? And so if you've got quite a bit of a thicker noodle than this, you probably will want to leave the heat on and actually boil the noodles for maybe 3 minutes before you turn the heat off. So, you know, in this case, we can do either. But the point is if they sit long enough in boiling water, they will finish cooking. And you won't then accidentally overcook them by leaving the heat on too long. All right, so these are nicely bundled in about 1 serve per bundle, approximately. So I'm just gonna grab a couple of those out. But if you're unsure, it's about sort of 60 to 70 grams per serve for noodles, approximately. All right, so I'm gonna pop those into the boiling water now and give them a little stir. Okay. All right, so straight in there nice and carefully. We can give them a little flatten into the water. Okay, so now just so you don't forget, you might just want to set a timer. We only want to keep the heat on those for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. So I'll just do a quick little one here just in case I forget. So let's go 3 minutes, and then we're just going to turn the heat off and leave them there. Chances are then they'll continue their cooking in the hot water, but we won't get overcooked soggy noodles, which is never fun. Okay. And I'm curious if this is your first time having rice noodles in a dish, please let me know. Okay, so moving on with the salsa. Now we can kind of head towards the mango. Let's do that one next. So hopefully you've got a nice ready mango, but if it's a little bit underripe, that's okay too. And I'm going to show you a couple cool ways to chop the mango. Well, one way you probably already know, especially if you're Australian, but the other way you might not. So I want to show you this. Okay, so we want to line the mango up so that the pit is in parallel with our knife. So the pit's going to be running through here, and I'm going to try to shave the cheek off as close to the pit as I can, kind of finding the pit with my knife and then just grazing along it and following the contour. So notice how I'm kind of tilting in at the end because we're going to get less waste. So I really want to follow that pit as much as I can. Same thing on this side. Okay. The same thing on this side. We'll try and get as close to that pit as we can. Find it with the knife and follow the contour, tucking it in at the bottom. All right, then, just because we're gonna not waste this bit either, we're just gonna peel around the skin and eat it. No, I'm just kidding, you could. But we're just gonna get that little bit of extra meat off of there. The magic trick is with the cheeks. Okay. This helps if you've got nails to grip into them. So try not to throw any bit away if you can. The other thing you can now do with this pit is get a little bit of extra juice into the salad. So just give it a good squish. I'm not going to maybe get a lot, but in case you had more around your pit than I did, there's a bit of extra juice, less waste. Okay, I've got quite a bit of bubbling action on the boiling, so I'm just going to turn that off now. You might want to do the same. I only had about a minute left. There we go. And we'll just let that sit there on the heat. Okay, if you don't have mango, you could always use pineapple instead. And in the event that you don't have pineapple, you could also get away with nectarines. So this is a very versatile salad in that sense. If you were doing nectarines, try to get them a little bit underripe, just a touch, so that they're not going to necessarily go super mush on you. And don't worry about peeling them. You can definitely leave the peel on, but take the pit out, obviously. Okay, so you can do mango, you could do pineapple, you could do nectarines. So we'll just get these into some nice little salsa-sized pieces. Okay, this can go straight in. And look, if you absolutely love the fruit that you're using, the mango or the pineapple, you don't have to stick to the recipe. You can always double it. So you could use 2 mangoes. In all fairness, this recipe was created with a large mango, and these are what I'd maybe call mediums. So if I'm feeling extra sweet, I might actually choose to put both mangoes in. Okay, now the magic trick. You're going to need a glass, preferably with a slightly thinner rim than a thicker one. So if you have a choice, choose the thinner rim. Okay, so what we're going to do is you're going to take the mango cheek in your hand. Hope you're watching this, it's pretty cool. And we're going to dig the edge of the cup into the base of the mango, pressing it against our hand. And basically all we're going to do is scoop out the mango cheek from the skin. And there you have your mango cheek. So there's very little waste, okay? As compared to doing it the traditional way, which is, doing the cross cuts, trying to get down to the base without cutting yourself. Okay, so doing the cross cuts both ways, and then doing the inversion. That's all cool and that looks great. It's a great way to eat it if the kids are outside, making a nice mess all over their face. But when you actually go to get the fruit off of the skin, there's going to be a little bit more waste usually than using the cup method. Okay, so even if I do my best attempt there, it's also a little bit more time consuming, I find. And the pieces aren't quite the right size for my salsa, so I'm still going to have to then kind of cut them down to size. So it definitely works. It's just not as quick or as efficient as the cup method, which is kind of what I'm here to teach you, is how to do things a little bit smarter, not harder. At least that's my intention. Let me know if it's working. Okay, I guess the downside or the upside to that is that you could always then lick that clean and let the kids just kind of vacuum clean that if you wanted to. Obviously, I'm not going to do that for you now. But let's get those down to size, and then we'll work with our little one that we scooped out in the cup. So we just want little kind of bite-sized cubes for our salsa, unless you love them really chunky. All right. So there's our mango. Okay, so then obviously with the cup one, you can drain any juice into the salad, and we just flatten it, and then we're going to chop it up nice and easily. Okay, so a little bit of a time savings on that one and a nice result. All right, so if you wanted to put the extra mango in, you definitely could go ahead and do that now. And then we're going to move forward to get our avocado happening. All right, let's see how these guys are. So we want to open the avocado, slicing around the belly, well, around the middle. Okay, we're going to take out any bits that are noticeably a bit of an issue. Let's take out the seed. And we're going to need a couple of them if they're this size. And again, if you like it, I mean, if you really love it, just add more. It's your salsa, not mine. And we can take advantage of the fact that they are, while they're in season, let's eat them up. Now, it's probably a bit easier to accidentally slice through the skin of the avocado if you've got a really pointy knife like that. So I like to use a rounded steak knife, and I do it on the back end of the knife, so not the sharp end of the knife. So I'm just going to go through and cut sort of the same sort of shape as like we did the mango. Okay, so I'm just going to do my cross cuts so we get our nice little kind of diced sizes in all of them. Okay. This is something you can even get the little kids helping with. Just give them a butter knife and let them slice through the avocados. It doesn't matter then if they take a long time. Okay, so we've got our little bite-sized pieces here. And then you just need a spoon, probably a big spoon. Let's find a big one. Come on. All right, and we're going to scoop it out, and we're just going to flip it over into our hand so that we can do an inspection on the other side of the skin. So I just like to flip it over, make sure there's no yucky bits, all good. And then we can kind of just gently separate it. We don't want to mush it, but gently separate it into the bowl. There we go. Next one, scoop and flip. Yeah, a little bit there we can take out. Otherwise, all good. So yeah, pretty straightforward. But maybe, I mean, let me know if that's a new way for you guys. Hey guys, my cousin's on. Hello, Brittany. How's it going? So good to see you online. And hey, Jessica. And Steph, welcome. John, welcome. Thank you. Okay, so we're nearly through the avocado. And hang on, Brittany, isn't it like 4 in the morning where you are? What time is it? Wow, maybe you're not in Canada at the moment. Let me know where you're at, Brittany. Is it like the middle of the night there for you? Just did the math on that. All right. Okay, so there's our avocado. I don't know about you, but I absolutely love the avocado and what it brings to this dish. It's just that nice bit of creaminess so that you don't necessarily, you know, sometimes I find, especially kind of if you're exploring the idea of going dairy-free or you're already dairy-free, sometimes it's easy to miss that real kind of fatty flavorfulness of cheese. And it's easy to think of a salad as lacking cheese. At least I experienced that when I kind of started cutting that back. So I find avocado is an amazing substitution. You get the creaminess, you get the richness, and a lot of flavor, as well as a pretty nice texture. All right, next up is our lime. Let's use one big fat lime and juice that into there. If you haven't got the big one, let's do 2 little ones. Okay, so nothing complicated, just gonna pour that over. If you are using a machine like this, don't waste more lime than you need to. So actually we want to invert it, fold it in half again, and then re-squish it. And you get a lot more out of it. Okay. There we go. I see a lot of people put the lime in like that and wonder why they don't get a lot of juice out. So definitely the lime goes upside down. Juice face down. And then invert, fold in half, and squish again. There we go. Oh, that's a really juicy one. This is gonna be a very limey salad. Cool. Now, I like things a little bit spicy, a little bit interesting in life. So I'm gonna put in a couple of green chilies that I happen to have growing in my garden. And they're not super hot, so I'm gonna do the both of them. The only thing is we wanna try not to touch the open cut surface. So it's not always easy, but I generally like to get in there with a little spoon. Okay, so if you've got a little spoon on hand, and then sometimes, like I said, this is easier than others, but we just want to kind of scoop out that seedy bit without trying to touch the cut surface as much as you can. And then in either way, just make sure you wash your hands after and try not to rub your eyes for the next couple of hours, just in case. Apparently the gentlemen also need to be very careful the next time they go go to the toilet as well. I've heard horror stories. Okay, so we'll take those seeds out. That's another little thing you can do, is press it down and scoop it out. And then we want to chop them up, okay? So kind of like you're chopping a steak. You could then get a fork and do it that way, or I'm just going to use 2 knives in this case and just see if we can chop through them. We could flip one over and use it that way. I know it's a little bit of mucking around, but I'd rather you do it this way than actually go and get a pair of disposable gloves out and then waste those disposable gloves just for this. But that being said, if you were doing, say, a big batch of salsa and you were going to do a lot of it, then definitely the disposable gloves are worthwhile. I just don't want to waste anything that we don't need to, okay? So we want this really fine. If you are doing the chili, unless you like surprises and, you know, there's an uncle that's coming over that you don't really, well, don't do that because you'll probably be the one that then bites into it. But anyways, okay. So we want to get all those bits. Notice I'm not touching any of that. And I did that last, okay? Just because then it's not on the cutting board in case you're going to contaminate it. All right. So let me just give this board a quick rinse. You can do the same. And then we're going to move on to a little bit of fresh mint. If you haven't got mint, you can always use coriander. You could use a bit of Vietnamese mint or Thai basil. Those are all delicious different flavors, and they'll bring a totally different, I guess, flavor profile to the whole salsa. So you can change it up. So I've got a little bit of apple mint from my garden, which is a nice fuzzy mint. Okay, and then some regular sweet mint. All right, how's everyone going? Steph, I didn't wash my hands after working with chili last week and rubbed my nose and top lip. Yes, I can feel for you, Steph. I think we've all done it, and it kind of takes once for you to go, oh, right, shoot, shouldn't have done that. All right, now mint, depending on the mint that you're using, the stems can be quite noticeable in the dish. So we want to get as little stem as possible. And so I'm just going to do a little bit of, I guess, plucking on these apple mints because they do have some pretty hefty stems. Okay, so we just want the leaves. And it definitely is something you don't want to omit in this salad. I just find when we're looking for a nice summer refreshing meal, or in the case of, I guess, my cousin who's watching this from Canada, a nice winter meal, hopefully your house is well heated to enjoy this, then definitely we want to include the mint because it's just such a key ingredient, a key flavor in this. But again, a lot of other fresh herbs can work too. Okay, if the mint is fairly flexible with the stems, you can, and I know this is a little bit blasphemous if you were to talk to a chef, proper chef in a restaurant, but we can just chop really finely through that if you're in an absolute hurry, and just make sure that any stems that are in there are just chopped really, really fine. But ideally, we're not getting into any of the woody bits of the stem. So this only works kind of for the top of the bunch. All right, we don't want to go too far into that, otherwise we're going to get a bit too much stem. So in this case, I've got the apple mint and I've got the sweet mint. And whenever you're cutting fresh herbs, I find this does 2 things. So it's kind of scrunching it up, does one job of bringing out the flavors in the leaves by kind of bruising them a little bit, by squishing them. And it also makes it a lot easier to chop. So when they're all scrunched together, we can get that really fine diced pieces, basically, that we're after. Okay, so there's our couple of mints. Now that's more than what I called for in the recipe, but I love it. So I'm going to do that amount in there for a bit of mint. Who says we need lettuce? We can just put fresh herbs. Did you know that herbs contain a heck of a lot more vitamins and minerals than kind of most foods per calorie? So, you know, even something like turmeric, for example, or what was it, thyme? I believe it was thyme that contains really high amounts of iron and zinc. So I know we don't eat a lot of them, but it definitely pays to eat probably more than we are. All right, let's get all that out of the way. Let's keep our ginger. And then we just need a little pinch of salt, and I believe we have got everything that we need in that salsa. So let's give it a little pinch of salt, about 1/4 of a teaspoon. And again, it's not to make it taste salty, it's just to kind of blend some of these flavors in together. And then let's give it a toss. So grab yourself a little spoon, or not. Okay, so lots of color, lots of different textures. Okay, and as this sits, it's going to get more juicy. So we don't actually want to add any other dressing to this. We've added the lime juice, and that's going to be plenty. And then that little bit of salt is going to draw out some of the other juices in the veggies too. So don't be tempted to kind of drizzle oil over this. It is actually going to soften down quite a bit. So just looking at that, I feel like I want a little bit more mango in it because that wasn't a super large mango, but I might add one after. All right, so there's our salsa. So now we're ready to get on to the tempeh. So for those of you that are not familiar yet with tempeh, I'm excited. Hopefully you found it. The one thing I will say about tempeh is it's somewhat hard to find one that isn't flavored. Okay, so this is one that I buy. It's made locally. This is the original, but make sure that there's still not added flavors to it. And I'll show you what it looks like when it's out of the package here. So it doesn't look appetizing, I'll give you that. And oftentimes it puts people off the first time they see it. But it is a very good quality food if you can find an organic tempeh. Make sure that it's not genetically modified. Okay, so this is tempeh, and this is a perfectly healthy, wonderful piece of tempeh. These are just the cultures that have formed during its fermentation. So that's perfectly normal. And by the time we fry it off and add a bit of flavor, it's nice. Some people kind of call it their version of bacon if we slice it really thin. But for me, it's just a really great blank canvas that you can add your choice of flavor to. So I'm just going to cut it into really thin strips. And what I mean by really thin is probably about 3 or 4 mils thick. Okay, so you can see against the knife, it's fairly thin. And that's just going to give us a little bit more surface area to enjoy the flavor with. So nice thin pieces. It's pretty durable and it's not going to fall apart on you, so that's nice. Okay, it's very meat-like in its feel in terms of its texture. So we're going to get our nice thin strips. And then we are going to need, if you still got your mandolin handy with the julienne blade, I'm going to actually use that to get the ginger happening too. Okay, so that's the tempeh. We're going to fry that off soon. We just need to get the ginger ready. So get out your fresh ginger, and I'm going to make use of the same thin julienne blade again. And then when it comes to the ginger, try not to cut off the piece that you're going to be using, because then you don't have a handle to hold it with. So this is a kind of a piece I'd cut prior, and I've given it a bit of a cleanup as far as any little crevices that it might have. But at the end of the day, it's not such a big deal that we get a bit of skin into this, because we're going to be frying it and julienne it really thin. So I just like to take any angle with it, as long as you've got a good handhold, and we just want some julienne pieces. Okay, so depending on how much you love your ginger, will determine how much to use. Ginger can get quite hot and spicy as well. So this is probably going to be a good amount for me, but I'd say that is probably about twice what I've called for in the recipe. Okay, so just if you're new to that, we don't need to chop it up finer yet, but I'm going to do just a couple little chops, just so we can have more of those bites in there. All right, Tiffany, so I'm guessing you meant tempeh. You used that recently in a stir fry and the family loved it. That's awesome. They didn't even realize there was no meat in the dish. Love how it absorbs flavor. And yes, you're spot on. It is a blank canvas. It will absorb what you give it. So that's why, lots of ginger, lots of garlic, lots of tamari. You could even be putting a bit of miso paste in after if you're making kind of into a little bit of a sauce with it. And this is probably the one food, although I don't do any deep frying, and I probably do very little. I don't even do shallow frying, but I guess I still use oil in a frying pan sometimes. This would probably be the thing that I would most fry than anything else, and therefore for me it is a bit of a treat, and be something that you don't need much of. So if this is like a good fried sort of crispy edges on it with a lot of flavor in it, you only need a couple of pieces. Well, I do. So it's something that you can have, you know, in much more moderation, and then provided you're using a good, safe, high heat cooking oil that's safe in the frying pan and not, you know, trans fat, then we're all good. Okay. Okay, so that's all the prep we need to do for the tempeh. So let's move over to your stove top now with the frying pan. And ideally you want to choose a large frying pan because we need more surface area for the tempeh. Okay, so come on over. Let's get that preheated, nice and hot. Okay. And if you're not, so ideally we're not using a non-stick pan. Okay, if you are, you don't need to worry about this preheating technique, but if we're not, so if we're using, in this case, it's a hybrid between a cast iron and a stainless. In order to make a stainless steel pan behave as a non-stick, we need to fully heat it first, get it really nice and hot. Okay, so while that's happening, I'm just going to give that a couple of minutes. Let's drain the rice. Well, first of all, test it and make sure that they're done. Okay, and then we're going to drain the rice noodles and get them ready. Okay, so make sure they're all good. If they're not quite cooked yet, you can put a little bit more water in and turn the heat back on, but by now they should be plenty good. So let's get a strainer. Okay, and we'll bring them over. Give them a rinse. And then the one trick that we want to do with this is to prevent them from all sticking together and going a bit gluggy. We're going to actually, well, we can give them one quick little rinse here. And make sure you shake them fairly dry. Well, hold a lot of water actually. And then the trick here is to drizzle some of the oil through. So I've called for the toasted sesame oil. If you don't love that toasted sesame flavor, you can use maybe an olive oil or maybe macadamia oil, whatever you've got on hand. Okay, so I'm just going to drizzle that straight into there and give it a little toss. Okay, so I've just got some toasted oil. This is the one with the really strong smell. So if you smell it and it doesn't smell like much or it smells like normal oil, then you haven't got the toasted variety. So we want the toasted sesame oil. Okay, and I'm just going to put a little drizzle through that nice and evenly if you can. I love the flavor. If you're new to sesame, maybe go a bit easy on that. Okay, and then we just want to kind of gently, with your pasta utensil, just want to kind of toss that oil through a bit so that we don't get it totally mushed. Okay, and that's just going to prevent everything from becoming a gluggy, sticky mess. You can do this trick with any pasta. And we'll just let that sit there for now. Okay, so come on back over. I think that the pan will be ready by now. Okay, I'm going to give it a little bit of cooking oil, and then we're going to get straight into frying the tempeh and the ginger. So give that a little swirl. And this should then behave fairly non-stick for us. Straight in. All right, so you kind of want to even it out so that ideally each piece kind of gets a spot on the bottom of the pan, but we'll just be moving it around as it goes. And then you might need a little bit of extra oil. I'm just using an organic cold pressed avocado oil because it's very safe at high heat. So you could do a little bit of extra olive oil in that sense. Okay. Now we can do this straight away or as it goes, but a little bit of tamari always helps for the flavor too. So go by feel or taste. It's about a tablespoon, maybe a bit and a half. All right, how are we going? Okay, so good question, Tiffany. Why the toasted sesame? Did have some trouble finding it. Regular sesame is okay, yes, or better to use olive oil. Do love the flavor of sesame. Okay, so you are going to be getting a much better flavor, sesame flavor, obviously from the toasted one. Because they toast the oil, it actually changes the flavor of the sesame oil. So if you only have the natural sesame oil, that's absolutely okay. You're just not going to be getting as much of the flavor. All good. That's all right. Okay. It just means that you're probably, when you serve the noodles in the cups or in the wraps, you'd want to be adding either a touch more salt or a little bit of tamari just to give it that extra little oomph of flavor. Okay. Steph, I've never cooked with tempeh before. Does it dry out if it's overcooked? As a matter of fact, Steph, that's actually how I prefer my tempeh. So you may not, but I actually prefer it with kind of a nice dried out crispy edge on it, a little bit like, dare I say, bacon, okay? So to answer your question, yes, it will kind of dry out, but it tastes good. I actually prefer it that way. So I don't really like it when it's too soft, but I'm sure everyone's different. So let me know how you go, how you thought of that, okay? So with that bit of tamari that we put in, you'll see that nice browning on the tempeh. That's exactly what we're looking for. I love that texture and that finish. Especially if you're new to tempeh, I would recommend to kind of overcook it rather than undercook it. Tempeh is one of those things that a person will make their decision on as soon as they bite it, I've found, okay? And so generally you're better off to kind of make that first impression count. All right, so while that's happening, you can stay here. We're going to get the lettuce. So get your iceberg lettuce, and I'm going to show you how we can cut into it so that you get whole cups, basically. I've had some people say, oh my gosh, how do you do this? So I'm going to show you that. So grab your iceberg lettuce, okay? I found a big one, actually. And we're going to kind of peel off any outer layers that are either way too big or are not super pretty to serve. I was very lucky with this one. We only had one layer that I'm not going to use. Okay. Now, with the iceberg lettuce, you can wash it, but you'll find out when you break into it whether or not you absolutely need to. It's that one little extra step. If you do break into it, then we will need to spin it, to lettuce spin it. So if you don't have a lettuce spinner, can't believe I'm saying this, but maybe don't wash it. So generally speaking, once we get in past those couple of loose leaves, it's okay in the middle and it's fairly protected the way that they grow, okay? So now the trick is we want to carve around this stem and a little ways into the lettuce in order to make the peeling off of the layers a bit easier. Okay, so before I do that, I'm just going to give this another flip because I can smell them. Okay, if you're starting to get kind of a stronger burning smell, you can turn the heat down a bit. As a matter of fact, those are really close, so I'm actually going to turn the heat right off, and I'm just going to let them sit in there. Okay, so they're pretty darn close, and I might give it one extra little shot of tamari. Okay, and I suppose because I'm going to let that sit there, we can probably move back over and I'll show you this step over here. All right, so we're going to carve around the stem and a little ways into the head. And we should get something like that. It's kind of like a Christmas tree, actually. I wonder if you could decorate that. Okay, sorry while I get a kick out of myself. Let's peel off the layers. Okay, so now this is a little bit of like a Japanese puzzle or some type of, can you imagine serving your dinner in this size one? This is a huge lettuce. You could, because you could totally wrap it up and turn it into a nice big humongo wrap. Maybe that's for your 18-year-old sons. But that is the idea, okay? So we do want to get the cups like this, although that's huge, off the lettuce. So let's try and get piece by piece, loosening it up And I find it's easiest if we sometimes start at the base. Okay, so it's, like I said, it's a bit of a puzzle. What do they call those kind of, I think they're called Indian puzzles. They're like a stick that you find in the bush, and you can take them apart and they only go back together one way. So it's a bit of a puzzle. So this does take a little bit of extra care, but by the time you get into the middle, those are kind of the magic sizes that we want. And it's not a big deal. Look, if you can't get nice cups out of this, it's okay. We have other options. So I'm going to show you how we can do this into a rice wrap as well. And then if you've just got your kind of broken pieces of lettuce, absolutely okay. Okay, so we're just unwrapping the present past the parcel. Maybe you'll get a surprise. That could be a bit of a ha-ha on your Christmas, is say, hey guys, everyone pass it around. You get the cup that you peeled. I find that this helps me really appreciate nature and the miraculousness that every single vegetable is so incredibly different and unique, and oh, it's just amazing. Okay, so if you get a few broken bits, that's absolutely okay. This one's got a bit of a funky shape to it. Okay. And we're nearly there, nearly ready to eat. How's everyone else's lettuce heads going? Smash the base of the lettuce on the bench and it will break away easier. You sure about that, Jess? All right, here we go. Don't know if that was enough of a smash. But yeah, the idea is to kind of massage it as you go. Good thinking. Okay, so at some point it should start to unravel itself a bit easier. And then we get all these lovely little cups to work with. This one had a bit of a funky shape in the middle. Okay, so that's one way that we can serve it, is inside the cup of the lettuce. The other way you can serve it is with a rice wrap. So first of all, I'll show you the cup way. Look at that. You never think that there'd be that much food inside of a pile of lettuce. That's beautiful. All right. Any other questions here, guys? Oh my gosh, Jonathan, hello. Thank you for watching. Geez, you guys must be up at like 4 in the morning or something over there. Thank you for being online. We're just about ready to serve. So is everyone caught up? Are you guys ready for me to plate this up and show you what a mango cup looks like? Let's give that a go. All right. So now, depending on how you're serving this, my intention generally is to kind of have, say, 2 to 3, if they're this size, lettuce cups per serving, roughly. And if you're using the smaller cups, like if you're working with sort of this size of a cup, generally speaking, in order to be able to have enough left over to wrap it, we want to be putting in much less than you think. It's very easy to overfill these cups. So we're going to start with a little bit of noodles down the bottom. Okay, remember, less is more. So I'll just put in a nice little tiny bit down the bottom. Now you have a couple options here as well. You could drizzle in a little bit of tamari into that straight away, or you can serve the tamari separately as a topping to go on top. Okay, then we'll put in a little bit of our salsa into the cup. Doesn't need a heck of a lot. And some tempeh. Oh yeah, those are nice. Good stuff. Okay, so I'm going to put those on a plate just so we can show you what's going on there. Hopefully nice and gingery. So then with this one, again, it's not super critical, but if we're looking for presentation brownie points, I like to cut them on a bit of an angle and serve a couple in there, maybe with another 1 or 2 in each, depending on how much you love it. Okay, so then we can just arrange our plate with multiple of those, and then when you go to eat it, you kind of just wrap it up into your hand and make it into a bit of a wrap. It's not a recommended meal for a first date. It can get a little bit messy depending on your lettuce. Okay, so, but it is fun, and it's a really fun food for families and fun food for kids, because when you tell a kid that yes, they can go ahead and get messy, my gosh, I think they'll try anything, they'll eat anything, okay? So please do have fun with it. But if that's too messy for you, then I want to show you another option that you have. And that is with a rice wrap. Okay? So those of you that are not familiar with rice wraps, this is what they look like. So they're very thin, paper thin, okay? And then in order to get them soft and wrappable, we need to wet them ideally in hot water. Now, it's not ideal. So in a perfect world, if you're going to do a bunch of these, I would even just, get a frying pan out or a shallow dish and put some hot water or boiling water into that, and you just dunk it in the water and let it sit there for a couple of seconds and then take it out. But for the sake of quickness today, I'm just going to give it a little rinse through the water here. Okay, better if it's hot. This is not quite going to go soft enough for me, but it will over time here. Okay, and then basically we're just going to use that as our external wrapper. It does need to be hot water. So we can just put some of those broken pieces of lettuce that you've got down first. Okay, so just a nice little, again here, definitely less is more. So nice little delicate layer of lettuce first. Put our little bits of noodles in there. Okay, a couple pieces of tempeh and a row of salsa. Okay, and then we just take the rice wrapper, roll that all up together, tuck it over on itself. And ideally, if you've wet the wrapper enough or with hot enough water, then this will all actually stick to itself and behave properly as a nice wrap. So then you can just tuck in the base, and there you have your rice wraps, okay? Which then if you want to serve them, you can cut them on a nice angle, stand them up in a little bowl and serve them like that, drizzling a little bit of tamari in them. Okay, so this is another option. This is possibly even a better option if you're sending them to school in school lunches as well. Okay, so there's your little rice wrap option. And then last but not least, I want to show you, it's a little bit more work, definitely, but as is in terms of an appetizer or kind of a special entree, you might call it, before a meal, you could get yourself some little cups like this. So ideally clear glass. And then all we're going to do, just follow me on this one, we're going to take a fork and ideally a soup spoon, and we want to make as much of a little bundle, round bundle of noodles as we can. Okay, and then we'll put that into the cup. Then we'll put our bit of salsa on top. Actually, before that, sorry, I forgot. Let's do a little drizzle of this down the bottom because they're not going to get the chance to dip it. So a little drizzle of tamari down the bottom. Okay. Then our salsa. Better if you had a smaller spoon for this. Okay. Nice if it kind of sticks up the top. And then, like I did before with the tempeh, we're going to cut that on an angle, kind of a steep angle, and we're going to put 2 in the edges, just along one edge, so that when you serve it, you've got your little mango cup and noodles down the bottom. So ideally, we've got like that nice circle of noodles down the bottom. I didn't really do a great job of that, but then that can be just served on a platter, and people can just have a little fork, and there's your little entree / appetizer before a fancier meal. All right, so there we have the mango cups. Any last little questions? How did everyone go? Loving these vids, guys. Thanks, Erica. Awesome. Thanks for being on. And cool. Okay, so I want to see photos. I want to see how it turned out. I want to hear your stories. I want to hear if the kids had more fun eating it. I want to hear if you made a mess absolutely everywhere, or if you had other dipping sauce ideas. Some other things that come to mind for dipping sauces, some people might go sweet chili. Ideally, you're making it yourself, not using one from the store. You could be using a fish sauce if you're having fish sauce. You could be even just doing a really simple kind of lemon garlic dressing style thing as well. And you may find it doesn't even need it. So anyways, there's our mango salsa cups, and would love to hear your feedback. Thank you so much for coming to cook with me, and we'll see you guys next time.